We're on page Kuf Gimel, page 103. If you're following the paragraph system, we're in the middle of paragraph Kuf Chaf Daled, paragraph 124. We're on page Kuf Gimel for those who are using the handout. Page Kuf Gimel, now at the bottom of the page. Again, on Kuf Aleph, Rav Friedlander wrote a caption that the subject matter of this chapter is Metzius Ha'odam Ba'avodoso, explaining the existence of man and what is man's job and man's task in this world. What is he supposed to do while he's in this world? So we mentioned several times that the Ramchal has developed for us a lot of introductory material and a lot of new concepts. Hastaras Panim, Ha'aras Panim, Guf, Neshama, what Olam Haza is, what Olam Haba is, to the extent that we can understand it at all. And now we'll bring a lot of concepts together. What is man's existence and what is man's job? So we understand from having learned the Sefer thus far that man's job is to partner up with the Rebbeinu Shalom to take the perfectly imperfect world that God created and to do our work to perfect that world. That is why man was put in this world, to partner up with God and finish the act of creation that God started during the 6 days of creation and perfect that perfectly imperfect world that God created. We have, as we mentioned, such a lashon in Chazal and Gemara and Shabbos, Nasa Shutaf LaKadosh Baruch Hu B'Ma'aseh Bereishis. Man has an opportunity to become a partner with God in creation. The tools that we have to perfect ourselves and the world, the Torah and the mitzvahs, but those are the tools that we use to perfect the world. The tachlis, the reason why man is in this world, is to perfect himself and perfect the world. So on page Kuf Aleph, the Ramchal began the explanation of the system. The world is not in chaos. It runs by a perfect system. And this system operates on something called kononius, gears, like the Ramchal wrote ulogin, like a watch. A watch has gears in it. The second gear moves the minute gear moves the hour gear, and the fancy watches, the hour gear then moves the date. The gears have to move at the right speed. If the second gear is moving too quickly, then the hour gear will move quickly, etc. If the second gear is moving too quickly, the minute gear moves too quickly, and the hour gear moves too quickly. You have one problem. If the second gear is moving too slowly, the minute gear moves too slowly, the hour gear moves too slowly, and then your watch is slow. We used to talk about these things growing up. My watch is slow. My watch is fast. And then you would go to the jeweler, you would open the back of the watch, and you have to adjust your gears. We don't talk about that this much today because you open the back of a watch, there's a battery in there. When the battery goes bad, the watch stops, put in a new battery for 15 shekel. The gear system is the way the world operates. Man, through his actions or inactions, pushes gears, and those gears push other gears, and those gears push other gears until the gear that's what we would call before the Kisei HaKavod gets pushed. And then the Rebbeinu Shalom makes a judgment as to what will be done with that gear. Man all the way down at the bottom of earth pushed the gear. It resulted in all kinds of gears in this system being pushed. We don't even sometimes understand how many gears we push. You say something down here below on earth, and you affect who knows how many people when you say something. And all kinds of gears start getting pushed. You can affect them for the good. Hashem, you can affect them for the bad. You do something here on earth, we sometimes have no appreciation of how many gears we push, how many people are affected, how many creatures are affected, how many plants are affected, how many trees are affected, etc. And when all these gears are pushed, they come in front of the Kisei HaKavod, the Rebbeinu Shalom has to decide what the result of the human action below was that caused all these gears to move. And sometimes you have a human action that turns the gear. Some of the gears turned for the good, some of the gears turned for the bad. And this is really true of almost any human action. Since the time of Adam Harishon and Chava eating from the Eitz Hadas, Tov Ra, and as I say, you need to underline that. People use shorthand. They say, oh, the Chet of the Eitz Hadas. The Chet of the Eitz Hadas leaves us with the impression that the sin was the Eitz Hadas. The sin is the Eitz Hadas, Tov Ra. The result was that man lives in a state of confusion. Good is bad, bad is good. Everything that has good has some bad in it. Everything that has bad has good in it. And we're trying to separate good from bad. We're trying to separate out the good from the bad so that when we push the gears in our life, that the gear should only push the good things. It should have no ill ramifications. That's a very difficult thing because we live in the world of the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra. I'll give you an example of that. It says that when Yaakov was getting ready to meet Esav, Yaakov set up his wives with their children in separate camps. And each mother with their child, with their children, eventually bowed to Esav. The only child who never bowed to Esav at that moment when they met was Binyamin, because he wasn't born yet. And so Binyamin never bowed to Esav, and therefore the Medrash tells us, we'll stick in a little Purim here, the Medrash tells us that Mordechai, who came from Binyamin, Mordechai was able to hold himself back and wasn't scared. He didn't bow down to Haman. Haman comes from Amalek. Amalek comes from Esav. And Mordechai comes from Binyamin. So the same way Binyamin didn't bow down to Esav, he wasn't born yet. So his knees never touched the ground to an Esav. So generations later, Mordechai had the intestinal fortitude to say, I'm not bowing down to this Haman, Amalek, Esav. Okay, we go back to the event. All the children are with their mothers, and they're going to bow down to Esav. There's no record of Dinah. Rashi, in the name of Chazal, asks, V'Dina heichan hoisa. Where was Dinah? Dinah's not mentioned in the pasuk. The Medrash tells us, Rashi quotes it, that Yaakov Avinu took Dinah and put her in a box. Put her in a piece of luggage. After all, Yaakov was traveling home, so there was plenty of luggage. So he put Dinah in a box. Why? Because he didn't want Esav to see her, because she was a very beautiful young lady. And then Esav would say, oh, my good brother Yaakov, you want to make peace with me? You want to show me that you love me? I'd like to marry my niece Dinah. In order to not get into that situation, Yaakov Avinu put Dinah in a box. Shortly after that story, what happened to Dinah? She was raped. Right? Shem raped her. And Rashi there comments that the Rebbeinu Shalom said, Yaakov Avinu, you boxed up Dinah so that she can't marry Esav. So if you don't want it to have Esav, she's going to fall into the hands of Shem. So it sounds like Yaakov was punished. It doesn't sound like it. It is. He was punished. And the Bali Musa asked, the Svarim asked Akasha, but the Bali Musa specifically asked Akasha, Yaakov Avinu had the best of intentions. He had the best of intentions. He boxed up Dinah so that Esav Chas v'Shalom shouldn't start a conversation about marrying Dinah. He wanted to save his Dinah from Esav. What's the result of that? She gets raped by Shem. Why does such a good thing, such a good intention, end up with such a bad result? And the Baalei Musa say because Yaakov Avinu was absolutely correct. He was absolutely correct by putting Dinah in a box so that Esav would not start the business, I want to marry her. Yaakov Avinu had every right. He was correct in saving Dinah from Esav. And he puts her in the box. But when you put Dinah in the box, what does Yaakov realize about his brother? It's his brother Esav. I need to protect my Dinah from Esav. But I also recognize at this moment that if in fact Dinah marries Esav, there is this outside chance that this Dinah can change my brother Esav and maybe improve him, maybe make him a better person, maybe make him do some tshuva. With the putting of Dinah in the box, Yaakov Avinu should have realized that he had sealed the fate of Esav, that he will never do tshuva and he will die a Russian. What should that have done to Yaakov? The Baalei Musa say that while he's putting Dinah in the box and closing the box, he should at least cry. I'm doing the right thing, but I need to cry over doing the right thing. Sometimes you have to do the right thing and you have to cry when you do the right thing. Because Esav is now going to be sealed as a Russia. Dinah is maybe his last chance. And I'm doing this to my brother. And I need to do it for Dinah, to protect her. But ach and vey, what's going to happen to my brother now? So while you're doing the thing that is correct, shed the tear for the ramifications that can come out of it. And by not shedding the tear, and by just locking the box and not understanding the ramification of the loss of possibility that Esav would do tshuva, Yaakov Avinu was punished. Everything in the world is so complicated because there's nothing, almost nothing that can be done so purely that even when you do the right thing with the right intentions, it's going to affect other people. You're going to lock the box and save Dinah and protect your family. Esav. Can you imagine the Baalei Musa saying such a thing? That Yaakov Avinu should have had a cheshbon, what's going to be with Esav. And he should have locked the box, but he should have shed a tear for what he was possibly causing Esav, sealing Esav's fate. So as you move a gear, as Yaakov Avinu is locking the box and moving a gear in a good direction, he's moving the gear in a good direction, he's protecting Dinah from Esav. At the same time, there's another gear moving that is sealing the fate of Esav to remain a Russia. And what are you doing about that gear? Did you consider that gear? Did you shed a tear for that gear? And this is the chet of the Eitz Daas Tevunos. Good and bad are mixed together. So as we do things as human beings, we say things as human beings, we push gears. And the gears, some of them are good, and some of them have ramifications that are not so good. And all of these things are moving their way up through the gear system. One gear is pushing another gear, and when all these gears end up pushing that gear in front of the Kis Yaakov, Kadosh Baruch Hu has to make a decision what to do with what the man did all the way below when he pushed the first gear. And then the Ribbono Shel Olam sends the gear system back down. What hashpah? What am I going to send back down because of what this human being did? Is it going to be schar, chas v'shalom, something else? What am I going to send back down the gear system? So this is the system of the Kononius. And as the Ramchal explained on page Kuf Beis, inside the Kononios, inside the system, there has to be Kononios, there have to be gears that turn evil. If there are no gears that turn evil, there's again no Bechira. If there's no Bechira, there can't be Schar v'Onesh. God doesn't want robots. We read that in Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan Zatzal when he was talking about if I were God. God doesn't want robots. There's no purpose to a robot. God has plenty of robots. They're called malachim. God created the world, as we learned at the beginning of the Daas Tevunos L'Hetiv, to bestow good on creation. To bestow good on creation, the ultimate good is when man earns the good, and he earns the good because he makes the right decisions. And in order to make the right decisions, he has to have choices. And choices means built into the system of the gears, there are gears you can push that are evil. So this we're up to on page Kuf Gimel at the bottom of the page. Rav Friedlander's caption is Hara, Kshehu bimkomo hanachon, b'ma'areches habriya, maybe to'eles la'odom l'tzorech avodaso. Evil, when it's kept in the right place, in the ma'areches habriya, you keep evil in the right place in the system, it brings tremendous benefit to man in order to be an Oved Hashem. If there'll be no evil gears in time, this system, imagine a box that has gears in it. And if there was no evil gears in there that man is tempted to pull, he has no Bechira. And if he has no Bechira, he has no Avodas Hashem. If he has no Avodas Hashem, he gets no Schar. And if the world was created for Schar, then you have to have choices, you have to have Bechira. And in the system, there has to be those gears that you can push, chas v'sholem, to do evil, or you can stay away from them. But they're part of the system, and as long as you keep them in the system works, and you're okay. The problem is when you remove the evil out of the system, and you give the evil its own separate identity, and the evil is something self-standing and self-independent, and you engage in evil separate and apart from the system, and you create, so to speak, a new system. This is the system of I do what I want. This is the system where I don't have to care about anybody else. This is the selfie system. When you take what was inside the system, which was selfishness, as an example, the world revolves around me, or as we learned about Tyre earlier today, greed, and everything is my handiwork, and I owe nothing to God. That can be in the system. That can be an evil thought and an evil attitude in the system, which you can either live with or chas v'shalom reject, and that's your choice. But when you pull this kind of evil out of the system and give it its own place, I stand on the principle of greed. I stand on the principle that I'm the most important thing in the world. I stand on the principle that self is the most important thing in my life. Then you've destroyed the system and destroyed yourself in the process. So now the Ramchal says, all of the gears that we mentioned above, all these gears are only relevant to the second phase we spoke about earlier. Remember, we said the whole world is basically two phases. This world where you work and you earn, and Olam Haba, pension, where you benefit from the earnings. The Kononio system, the gear system of making choices, is only relevant to this world. In the next world, Olam Haba, there's no choices to be made. There's no Bechira. When Mashiach comes, as we mentioned, the Gemara in Sukkah, Daf Nun Beis says that Rosh Shalom is going to rid the world of the Yetzer Hara. It's going to shech the Yetzer Hara. There's no more Bechira. Hayom laso samumachal kabel scharim, the Gemara says. Today in this world is the day that you can do mitzvahs. Tomorrow in Olam Haba, there's no mitzvahs. Tomorrow in Olam Haba is to collect your pension. So this whole system that has Bechira in it is only relevant to this world. Shulagalas Yehuda Yisvar, it is to be reveal God's ultimate uniqueness that we talk about, the Gili HaYichud. And again, we're going to have to come to Friedlander's essay about the two statements the Ramchal makes in the Daas Tevunos. The opening statement at the beginning of the Sefer that the world was created by God, Fahatova, so that God can send good and benefit the world. And then the Ramchal says that the purpose of creation was Gili HaYichud, for God to reveal His uniqueness. Which one is it? And Friedlander really explains that they're both two sides of the same point. We will believe to get to it. V'zeh al yedei hester haponim sheyakdim legiluyim. And this Gili Hayichud will occur through what we know of as Hester Panim, before the Ha'oras Panim. As we explained earlier, all the chaos, all the confusion, all the darkness that the world goes through is only for the purpose of God will reveal himself at the end, and the whole world will know that he is the one that controlled history, every event, every moment. There's not the God of light and the God of dark. There's not the God of evil and the God of good. It's all one God, and every moment percolating in every event was bringing about the toiv, the good of the Gili Hayichud. And this will be understood at the end, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu will pull up the curtain, as the Ramchal will say later in the Sefer, at a Hey Rabbi Yameinu B'Tzayin Hashem today. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to pull up the curtain, and behind the curtain we're going to see the truth of all world events and how all the puzzle pieces were really one big puzzle, and each piece fit into the other perfectly with a cheshbon from HaKadosh Baruch Hu all along. Ubaklal, now the Ramchal is going to explain what we mentioned a few minutes earlier. Ubaklal HaKononius, and amongst the gears in the system, Hu Inyan Hara Shezacharnu. It includes inside the gear system the evil that we've already spoken about. V'omnam hara mitzad atzmo levado. You need to understand that evil by itself, eina ela kelkulim v'hafsedim v'hashchasa. This evil means ruination and destruction if you take it out of the system. Ach im she'ar hakonanios, if you leave the evil gears inside the bigger system, adarab, it's just the opposite. Man benefits from having evil gears in the system because he rejects those evil gears, he refuses to turn those evil gears, and because he makes the choice not to turn the evil gears, he has the bechira, and eventually he's going to get reward. So those evil gears inside the system are helping man get reward. As long as you leave it in the system, and even if you're going to push some of those gears, you leave it in the system, and in the system there's something called tshuva. As long as you don't take him out of the system and make it an independent way to live, an independent system. However, all the evil that can give off destruction and ruination, if it's left with the other gears, it benefits me. Because by having the evil, quote-unquote, gears inside the system, it creates the possibility for a person to serve the Ribono Shel Olam. And the very purpose that God put the gears inside the system is only temporary. These are temporary gears. The purpose of the gears in the system is not that they should defeat and conquer mankind. God put them in the system so that they should be defeated by mankind. That's why those gears are there. Those gears are there in order to be defeated. They are targets. When a person takes target practice, he takes his gun and he sets up a whole bunch of cans and he shoots at the cans. The purpose of the cans being there is that they should be shot apart and blown apart. That's the success. These evil gears are put into there as a system, not to defeat, but to become, not to defeat the rest of the system, but to be defeated, and it will be defeated and removed completely from the system. When Mashiach comes and we rid the whole world of Ra, we rid the world of the Yetzer Hara. Perish. Let me explain, the Ramchal says. She'ein hi motzo Elios nisasas min ha'odom ke'evan ha'omedes al parshas derochem sheheviu b'misholim b'medrash l'chanu l'mayla. The very purpose of the Yetzer Hara, and he uses the example of an Evan, and the Yetzer Hara is compared by the Nevi'im to a rock. A man's heart can turn hard like a rock, and when he does tshuva, the heart softens up. So the Yetzer Hara is like a rock, a huge rock. And the Ramchal tells us that he quoted this Chazal earlier in the Sefer, and we learned it. The Medrash says that the Yetzer Hara is like this huge rock on a road, and it interferes with traffic. Nobody can walk down this road. And the road is needed for travel. So what do? People get together and they take little hammers, they start breaking little pieces of the rock. And they break little pieces and little pieces and little pieces and little pieces until a great portion of the rock is broken. And then the king hears about the work that people have done to open the road for travel. And the king sends down his big workers and his big tools, and they finish off the rock, and now the road is open for travel. So too, the Ribono Shel Olam watches man slowly break this rock, slowly defeat the evil gear in the system, and eventually, B'Tzayin Hashem Mamish today would be as Mashiach. The Ribono Shel Olam says, I see how much you have done, and I will complete the process and completely smash this evil gear, this Yetzer Hara. And that's why we say at the end of Shir so many times that B'mheira B'yameinu Mamish today, the Gili Hayichud that we have done and that we continue to do, we donate to Klal Yisrael till we bring it to that critical mass where HaKadosh Baruch Hu can send Mashiach Tzidkeinu and finish off the Gili Hayichud. So that's what we're referencing here when we say that, referencing this medrash. I'd like to take a look at footnote 233 in Rav Friedlander's Pirush. And now he's going to go back to the mashal of a watch. And he's going to talk about gears. And there are gears inside a watch. But if you remember what an old-time watch looked like, besides gears, there were springs inside the watch when you open the back of a watch. And sometimes the springs were no good, and the jeweler would have to change the springs, the kfitz. What are the two jobs? What's the difference between the job of the gear and the job of the spring? Well, the job of the gear was to push gears forward, and the job of the kfitz was to hold the gears back to the proper speed, so that they don't go too fast or too slow. So Rav Friedlander explains in footnote 233 at the bottom of page Kuf Dalet. Novin Zos, Lefi Moshel HaSha'on Shuv L'el. We can understand this by continuing with the Ramchal's moshel of a watch. B'Sha'on yesh chelek hamanio kadima. Sorry, he uses the opposite way. In a watch, there's a part that makes it go, that makes the gears move. Hakafitz, something like a spring. Ulo umase, in contradistinction to the part of the watch that makes the gears move, yesh chelek ha'otzer chalifos es mahalach hagalgalim. There's something that holds back the speed by which the gears move. So there are two things in the watch that deal with the gears, something that's making it move and something that's holding it back. And it's a perfect balance. If you had a good watch, it was a perfect balance. And people used to praise their watch. I only lose a second a year. And that's why they used to advertise watches. Over a year, you'll only lose 1 second of time. The back of the watch had these two mechanisms in it, and they were so perfectly balanced that one was pushing the gears forward, one was slowing the movement forward down, so that they would move exactly with time. Mahalcho Hatikin Rav Friedlander says, Shel HaSha'on, in order for the watch to work properly and keep proper time, Toli Pa'ula HaMashutefes Lechilufin Shoshnei Halakim Ha'ele Dechif Vatzila. In order for the watch to work perfectly and keep proper time, it was dependent on two opposite things. Dechifa, something that pushed the gears to go forward, va'atzira, and something that held the gears back. Now, these are two opposite things, pushing forward and holding back, but the balance between the two, when properly done by the jeweler, gave you a wonderful watch that kept time. Now, that is a watch. Now, the Ramchal says this is similar to the system, and the system is Avodas Hashem. This pushing forward and moving back, which is inside the system of a watch, is inside the system of man and the universe. Yesh tzarech b'shnei hatzdadim. You need both sides of this process, pushing forward and holding back. Betov uvara, good and bad. A person should be pushing the gears of good forward. At the same time, a person has to be able to stop the gears from moving in a bad direction. Shetachlis hara, the purpose of evil in the system, kashen nichnas b'mkomo hanachon, as long as it stays in its right place, litzur hechetimtza shel nitzoyin al menash yinutzach lebesoif. The whole purpose of that evil gear is to create an opportunity of challenge so that you can defeat the challenge and get your schar. Ula mitzad atzmo. However, if you remove the evil gear and you create it as an independent system, chutz migvulo umakomo zeh, you take it out of its borders and out of the proper place in the back of the watch, humash l'samachab. So if you don't have the perfect balance between in the watch, where something is pushing the watch forward and something is holding it back, if you have those, you have good time. The watch is functioning properly, the system is working properly. But if you let what we'll call the evil gear, that gear that should be stopping you from doing things, you have a gear that's pushing you to do things, you have a gear that's stopping you from doing things. If the gears go out of whack and you end up doing things that you shouldn't do, or you do things you shouldn't do, you do things you shouldn't do, or you don't do things you should do, so then you need to take your watch to a jeweler to readjust it. You need to take your neshama, and you have to learn Hilchos Tshuva to do tshuva. That's part of the system. But if you take one of the parts of the watch out of the back of the watch and put it separately somewhere, so that either the part that pushes and makes people do things, good or bad, or the part that stops people from doing things, stopping good or bad. If you take one of those gears out and you put it on a desk, so it's not in the system anymore, your watch can't keep time, and this evil, or this whatever you took out from the back of the watch, the pushing forward or the holding back, is now its own system, and in its own system it wreaks havoc on the person, wreaks havoc on the world. So while the gear and the thing that pushes it forward and holds it back remains inside the watch, and it remains properly adjusted, you have a watch that's working properly, and sometimes the watch goes off. You go to a jeweler, he readjusts it, which we call tshuva. The problem is if you remove part of it and you make a new system out of it, the watch doesn't work, it's broken, it can't tell time, and it wreaks havoc. So this is what the system is about, this kononios system. All Yid that need Yeshua shall be Yeshua, all Yid need Refuah shall Refuah, all Yid need Brach shall Brachs, all Yid need Nechamas shall Nechamas, Nechamas, Brachs, Yeshua, and Refuahs can only come from the Rebbeinu Shalom. He's the Echad, Yachad, Miyuchad. He's the creator, the supervisor, the manik. And we recognize this and internalize this and live it. We're doing the Gilei HaYichud that the Ramchal speaks about and we just spoke about. And the more Gilei HaYichud we do, the more that we break that rock of the rock of the Eitz Hara, and we donate that to Klal Yisrael to bring it to a Gilui HaYichud, to the critical mass, so that the Melech, the king, the Melech Malach HaMelech, and the Rebbeinu Shalom can then do the final work and break the Ra completely and remove the Ra, remove the Yetzer Hara from the system, and the system will be such a system where there'll be only Toiv and Ashpaz HaToiv, B'tzayin Hashem Mamish Day, with the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu, so we can build the Beis HaMikdash, bring Machzis HaShekel, bring Karbonis, and that we can be healthy and safe. We take care of ourselves. We do what we need to do, irrespective of, we obviously have to listen to the rules promulgated by the government. We're not going to be anarchists. We're going to use our seichel, however, that even when there are leniencies that the government promulgates, we have to use our own seichel, age, medical condition. Does it make sense for us because XYZ is now open that we're going to run to XYZ? We still make our cheshbonis through our seichel. Is it the healthy thing for us to do? When we think about these things and make these cheshbonis, we're doing an avodas Hashem. Last two Beis Yosefs and Choshen Mishpat, last Ber HaGoy Choshen Mishpat, to think about it, to make these calculations is an avodas Hashem, so that we can be healthy and well, to greet Mashiach Tzidkenu, B'tzayin Hashem Mamish today. Everybody have a wonderful day. Tomorrow is Yom Revi, no Shir. We'll pick up again on Thursday, B'li Neder, with Masechet Shavuos and with Parsha. Again, I'll send out, Shmuel will send out a reminder next Tuesday and the following Tuesday at 9:30, rather than doing Sefer Yeshaya for those 2 Tuesdays, we will do Inyanim about Megillas Esther in preparation for Purim Haba Leila Tova. Everybody have a wonderful day. Sei gesund.